"Grandma, they're planning to steal your fortune," whispered my grandson. "Grandma, my parents will steal your money after the celebration today," whispered my 80-year-old grandson, and his words hit like lightning, destroying the facade of family devotion. I, a trusting grandmother who had always supported them, departed early, concealing my shock behind a pretense of exhaustion. But what I executed next, a clever scheme for justice against their treachery, stunned everyone. I outmaneuvered them at their own deception, and they will never recover from it. Before we proceed, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching in the comments. I understand what you're considering, Mom, but listen to me. Sarah's voice pierced through the telephone, slicing through the Sunday morning stillness like a dull knife. I almost dropped my teacup. 6 a.m. calls weren't Sarah's habit, particularly not with that anxious quaver I recognized from her adolescent years when she damaged my car. "What sounds unusual, daughter?" I settled back into my kitchen chair, observing steam drift from my tea, while morning light created golden patterns across yesterday's unread magazine. "Well, David really believes. We both feel you should absolutely attend Michael's birthday celebration today." The words spilled out too rapidly, as if she'd practiced them but lost the tempo. Something frigid settled in my chest. Since when did they require persuasion for me to visit my grandson? "Sarah, when have I ever skipped one of Michael's birthdays?" No, that's not my intention." A pause. I heard what seemed like David's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. "It's simply that David's been organizing this for weeks, and he specifically requested I call and confirm you're attending." I stirred my tea slowly, watching the milk swirl into tiny whirlpools. David specifically requesting the same David who usually regarded my presence like an unavoidable burden. That's considerate of him. Yes, he's truly enthusiastic about it. Sarah's laughter sounded strained, artificial. "The celebration begins at 3, but perhaps you could arrive slightly early. We wanted to discuss some family matters." The spoon clinked against the cup as I placed it down. Family matters? In 3 years of widowerhood, family matters had never demanded special discussions. What sort of family matters? "Oh, you understand. Just organizing things, future arrangements. David has some concepts about how we can all be more connected with each other." I moved to the window, phone pressed to my ear, watching Mr. Thompson across the street tend his garden boxes. David with concepts about family connection. The man who'd spent Thanksgiving dinner last year scrolling his phone every 3 minutes. "That sounds pleasant, Sarah." I kept my tone steady, but my businesswoman's instincts were alarming. 35 years of reading people across meeting tables had taught me when someone was promoting something they didn't believe in themselves. "Wonderful. So, you'll be there early, maybe around 2:30. I glanced at the refrigerator where Michael's latest artwork hung next to my grocery list. A crooked house with stick figures labeled Grandma, Mommy, Daddy, and Me in blue crayon. That little boy was the brightest light in my world since Robert died. "Certainly, I'll be there early. I wouldn't miss Michael's day for anything. You're excellent, and Mom." Sarah's voice dropped lower. "Just maintain an open mind about what we want to discuss. All right? It's all about ensuring everyone's protected." The line went silent before I could ask what she meant by everyone's protected. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then set it on the counter next to my untouched magazine. Something wasn't right. Sarah's voice had carried that same guilty undertone I remembered from when she was 8 and had taken money from Robert's wallet for candy. But this felt larger than childhood mischief. I poured fresh tea and tried to dismiss the unease. Perhaps David genuinely wanted to strengthen family relationships. Maybe I was interpreting too much into a simple invitation. But as I sat back down with my tea, I couldn't stop thinking about that phrase, ensuring everyone's protected. In my experience, when people started talking about protecting everyone, they usually meant protecting themselves first. I looked at Michael's drawing again and smiled despite my concerns. Whatever Sarah and David had planned to discuss, it could wait until after I'd celebrated my grandson's 8th birthday. Some things were more important than adult complications. Still, I made a mental note to listen carefully to whatever they wanted to discuss. 25 minutes later, I stood in my bedroom closet, staring at blouses Robert would never see me wear again. The green silk brought back his funeral, how David had whispered about all this space while we buried my husband. Even then, something in his tone had felt calculating. I pulled the blouse from its hanger and caught my reflection in the mirror. $85,000, that's what I'd given them over the past 3 years. Mortgage assistance, vehicle repairs, Michael's private school fees. Robert would have called it excessive, but he'd also understood that Michael deserved better than his parents could provide alone. My purse sat heavy in my back pocket as I dressed. 3 credit cards stretched thin for Sarah's emergencies. The critical water heater replacement that became a full plumbing overhaul. David's temporary need for rent money that became a monthly expectation. Each request delivered with Sarah's embarrassed explanations and David's perfectly timed appreciation. Walking to the kitchen for my keys, I passed the refrigerator where Michael's latest drawing hung beside my grocery list. He'd drawn our last camping trip. 2 stick figures by a blue crayon lake, both smiling. "Greatest day ever, Grandma," written in red marker along the bottom. That's when David's recent suggestion hit me with fresh clarity. 4 weeks ago, standing in this exact spot, he looked around my kitchen and said, "Margaret, don't you think this house is getting too large for you? There are wonderful retirement communities where you wouldn't have to worry about upkeep." Sarah had quickly changed the subject to Michael's soccer season, but David's eyes had lingered on my marble countertops, the expensive appliances Robert and I had chosen together, the same calculating look he'd worn at the funeral. I grabbed my car keys from the counter, remembering Robert's last coherent words. "Promise me you'll always protect Michael, but watch Sarah carefully. She's weak, and weak people make dangerous decisions when someone strong is whispering in their ear." At the time, I thought he meant her drinking friends or get-rich-quick schemes. Now, I wondered if Robert had seen something in David that I'd missed. The garage door opener hummed as morning light streamed across my Honda. Robert's truck still sat in his spot, covered and pristine. I'd kept making payments on it for months after his death, unable to admit he was really gone. Maybe that's what they were counting on, my inability to say no when it came to family. The grandmother who'd rather pay than disappoint, who'd rather trust than investigate. But 45 years in real estate had taught me to check foundations before building anything important. I backed out of the driveway slowly, watching my house shrink in the rearview mirror. By tonight, after whatever conversation Sarah and David had planned, I suspected I'd see everything differently. For now, I needed to buy my grandson a birthday present. Something special, perhaps the last gift I'd give him before everything changed. Westfield Mall buzzed with Sunday morning energy as I parked near the main entrance. 9:20 and already families were streaming towards the toy stores. Perfect timing for Michael's gifts. The Lego architecture section drew me immediately. Michael had been fascinated by buildings since his school field trip to the City Hall last month. The Empire State Building set caught my eye, detailed enough to challenge his growing skills, but not overwhelming. $195 seemed reasonable for something that would occupy his curious mind for weeks. "Perfect choice, ma'am." The young clerk smiled as he rang up my purchase. "My nephew loves this series. Would you like gift wrapping? Please. It's for my grandson's 8th birthday. Next stop, sporting goods." Michael had mentioned wanting a real skateboard, not the tiny plastic thing he'd outgrown. The power model displayed near the window looked perfect. Lightweight deck, quality wheels he could manage, safety pads included. $340, but his delighted face would be worth every penny. Loading the skateboard box into my SUV, I checked my watch. 10:15. Plenty of time for one more stop. Margaret, what a lovely surprise. Dorothy Martinez materialized beside my car, clutching a shopping bag from the bookstore. My neighbor of 18 years looked genuinely pleased to see me, her dark hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Dorothy, good morning. Starting your weekend shopping early. Oh, you know me. I like avoiding the crowds. She gestured toward the mall entrance. Though I suppose you're here for birthday preparations. David mentioned Michael's celebration when I saw him last week. He mentioned it. I closed the SUV's rear hatch, curious. Where did you encounter him? Downtown, actually. Wednesday morning, I think it was. Sarah was with him, and they were emerging from Second National Bank with quite a stack of papers. Dorsey chuckled, looked very official and serious. Probably refinancing something the way young people do these days. Wednesday, 5 days ago. Sarah hadn't mentioned any banking business during her nervous phone call this morning. But then again, why would she? People handled financial matters all the time without broadcasting details. Probably just routine business, I said, shifting my shopping bags to my other hand. Of course, dear. None of my concern anyway. Dorothy patted my arm affectionately. Well, I'd better let you finish your shopping. Give my love to that sweet grandson of yours. She bustled away toward the bookstore, leaving me standing beside my car with a vague sense of unease. Banking business on Wednesday, nervous phone call on Sunday. The timing felt oddly coincidental. But then again, Sarah always seemed to be juggling some financial crisis or another. I shook off the feeling and headed toward the flower shop near the mall's west entrance. David had always appreciated flowers, and yellow roses would make a thoughtful gesture for the host of Michael's celebration. The florist, a middle-aged man with soil under his fingernails, wrapped a dozen long-stemmed roses in silver paper with practiced efficiency. These are beautiful, he said, adjusting the ribbon. Special occasion, my grandson's birthday celebration. They're for his father. How thoughtful. He'll love them. $32 for flowers that would wilt in a week. But David's pleased expression would be worth the expense. These small gestures mattered in maintaining family harmony, especially when underlying tensions existed. By 10:45, my SUV was loaded with packages that represented nearly $650 of birthday celebration. The Lego set, skateboard, roses, and the card I'd selected, each item chosen with Michael's happiness in mind. This was what grandmothers did. They spoiled their grandchildren shamelessly and enjoyed every moment of it. Driving home through Sunday morning traffic, I found myself thinking about Dorothy's casual observation. Sarah and David at the bank with papers, serious expressions, official business that Sarah hadn't bothered mentioning. But then again, married couples handled countless administrative tasks without involving extended family. Insurance updates, mortgage refinancing, college savings accounts for Michael. Any number of legitimate reasons could explain their downtown visit. Still, as I turned into my driveway, I couldn't quite dismiss the small voice in my head that wondered why Sarah had sounded so nervous this morning, if everything was truly as routine as it appeared. After wrapping Michael's gifts and grabbing a quick lunch, I arrived at Sarah's house precisely at 3. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Margaret. David practically sang my name, his arms spreading wide as if we hadn't seen each other in months rather than weeks. You look absolutely wonderful today. This enthusiasm felt foreign. David usually offered a polite smile and quick hug before disappearing into yard duties. Today he touched my arm twice while speaking, his eyes bright with an energy I'd never seen directed at me before. Thank you, David. The celebration looks lovely. I stepped inside, carrying the wrapped skateboard box and gift bag containing the Lego set. Colorful streamers hung from every doorway, and balloon clusters filled each corner, far more elaborate than previous birthday celebrations. Mom, there she is. Sarah appeared from the living room, her voice carrying across the house like a carnival barker's. Come meet Lisa from work. Lisa, this is my amazing mother I've told you so much about. Amazing mother. Sarah's workplace conversations about me typically focused on my old-fashioned business methods or retirement stubbornness. But today, she clapped my shoulder with theatrical enthusiasm. her laugh echoing too loudly in the decorated hallway. The living room buzzed with familiar faces. The Parkers from next door chatted near the fireplace, while Mrs. Johnson sat carefully on the couch, observing everything with sharp eyes. Carlos and Maria Rodriguez helped their daughter Anna arrange party games on the coffee table. "Grandma," Michael ran toward me, his genuine smile cutting through the artificial atmosphere like sunlight. He wrapped his arms around my waist, and for a moment the world felt normal again. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." I handed him the gift bag. "This one first, then the big surprise." He unwrapped the Lego architecture set with careful fingers, his eyes widening at the Empire State Building image on the box. But when he looked up to thank me, something flickered across his face, a shadow of sadness that vanished when David approached. "Isn't Grandma generous, buddy? Say thank you properly." "Thank you, Grandma. It's really awesome." Michael's voice carried genuine appreciation mixed with something else. Guilt, worry. An 8-year-old shouldn't sound so burdened during his own birthday celebration. Sarah guided me toward the kitchen where Lisa Davidson nursed a soda and made small talk about insurance sales. The conversation flowed normally enough, but Sarah kept interjecting with unnecessary compliments about my business wisdom and family leadership. Each comment felt rehearsed, like lines from a script she'd memorized poorly. "Margaret knows everything about building successful relationships," Sarah announced to Lisa. "She's taught me so much about trust and family loyalty." Trust and family loyalty. Strange topics for a casual celebration conversation, especially delivered with Sarah's current manic intensity. Lisa nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable with Sarah's excessive praise of her own mother. David reappeared with a plate of appetizers, positioning himself between me and the other guests. "Margaret, you simply must try these canapes. I made them, especially thinking of your sophisticated tastes." My sophisticated taste? David had never paid attention to my food preferences beyond ensuring adequate quantities appeared at family gatherings. Now he hovered beside me, refilling my wine glass before it emptied, and asking about my comfort level every few minutes. From across the room, I watched Michael opening cards from school friends. His movements seemed mechanical, polite, but distant. When Anna Rodriguez asked about his new Lego set, he nodded and smiled appropriately, but his responses lacked the genuine excitement I'd expected. "He's growing up so fast," Mrs. Johnson observed, settling beside me on the couch. "Such a thoughtful child. He asked me last week if grandparents and parents ever disagree about important decisions." My wine glass paused halfway to my lips. "What did you tell him?" "That families work through differences with love and honesty." Mrs. Johnson studied Michael with concerned eyes, though he seemed troubled by something beyond normal childhood worries. Across the room, Sarah and David exchanged a quick glance, the kind of wordless communication that suggested coordination. They'd been doing that all afternoon, I realized. Brief eye contact, subtle nods, perfectly timed interruptions when conversations approached certain topics. The afternoon stretched on with forced merriment and careful choreography. Every smile felt calculated, every laugh slightly too loud, every gesture of family affection performed for an audience. Only Michael's behavior toward me remained authentic, though shadowed by whatever burden he carried. As the celebration wound toward its conclusion, and guests began gathering their belongings, Sarah caught my attention with an overly casual gesture. "Mom, stick around after everyone leaves, okay? David and I have been looking forward to that family chat we mentioned." The artificial cheerfulness began weighing on me like humidity before a storm. I excused myself with a polite smile, mentioning the bathroom down the hallway. David jumped up immediately, offering directions I didn't need, his concern feeling rehearsed rather than genuine. Walking away from the celebration noise, I noticed Michael watching me from beside the gift table. Something in his expression, worry mixed with determination, made me pause. When I reached the hallway lined with family photos, Small footsteps followed behind me. "Grandma." His voice barely rose above a whisper. I turned to find him glancing back toward the living room, ensuring we were alone. The birthday boy, who should have been glowing with excitement, looked instead like he carried the weight of the world on 8-year-old shoulders. "What is it, sweetheart?" I knelt to his eye level, recognizing the serious expression he'd inherited from Robert. "You look troubled." He bit his lower lip, a gesture that reminded me painfully of his grandfather during difficult conversations. "I need to tell you something important about Mom and Dad." My chest tightened. "What about them, honey?" "They're planning to steal your money tonight." The words tumbled out in a rush, as if he'd been rehearsing them. "After everyone goes home." I heard them talking last night when I was supposed to be sleeping. The hallway seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, fighting to keep my expression calm for his sake. "What exactly did you hear?" "Dad said she has too much money for an old woman living alone." Michael's voice dropped even lower. "He told Mom they were going to fix that problem tonight. Mom seemed scared, but Dad said the papers from the bank would make everything legal." Papers from the bank. Wednesday's visit that Dorothy Martinez had mentioned suddenly made terrible sense. My business instincts, dormant for years, roared back to life with crystalline clarity. "Did they say anything else?" I asked gently, though my mind raced with implications I hoped an 8-year-old couldn't understand. "Mom kept saying, 'What if she finds out?' And Dad said it would be too late by then." Tears welled in his eyes. "Grandma, I don't want them to steal your money. You're the only one who really listens to me." I pulled him into a fierce hug, feeling his small body trembling against mine. Robert's grandson carrying adult secrets that no child should bear. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing they'd planned this within earshot of innocent ears. "Listen to me carefully," I whispered into his hair. "You did the right thing telling me, but we need to keep this our secret for now. Okay, can you do that?" He nodded against my shoulder. "Are you going to stop them?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to handle everything." I held him at arm's length, making sure he could see the certainty in my eyes. "But we need to go back to your celebration now and act normal. Can you be brave for me?" "I think so." He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. "Will you still love me if Mom and Dad get mad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Michael, nothing your parents do could ever change how much I love you. Nothing. Do you understand?" Relief flooded his face, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all afternoon. "I love you too, Grandma." Hand in hand, we walked back toward the celebration sounds. But everything had changed in those few whispered minutes. The daughter I'd raised, the son-in-law I'd supported, the family I'd trusted with my heart. All of it now viewed through the lens of calculated betrayal. As we rejoined the celebration, I caught David's eyes across the room. He smiled and waved, the same false enthusiasm that had puzzled me earlier. Now I understood exactly what that performance was designed to accomplish. That evening, sitting in my home office with Robert's photo watching from the bookshelf, I finally saw the manipulation clearly. The escalating requests had been conditioning, training me to say yes to increasingly larger amounts. David's suggestions about retirement communities weren't concerned for my welfare. They were reconnaissance for tonight's planned theft. I made the necessary calls to my attorney, my banker, and my notary. By morning, I had orchestrated my own plan. When Sarah and David arrived with their documents and rehearsed concern about my declining mental state, they found me surrounded by witnesses, including a bank vice president who remembered their suspicious questions about guardianship procedures. Their carefully planned theft crumbled within an hour. I changed my will, establishing an educational trust for Michael that they couldn't touch. The monthly support ended permanently, and they faced the consequences of their betrayal. Michael's future was secure, and justice was served. Sometimes the most painful lessons come from those we love most. But protecting family means more than just providing money. It means ensuring the next generation learns the difference between love and greed. Michael would grow up knowing his grandmother fought for him when it mattered most.